Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
Tyranny requires your fear and your silence and your compliance. Democracy requires your courage.
Governor Pritzker compares the Trump administration's actions to Nazi Germany as he unveils his budget proposal. City Council rejects an effort to lower the speed limit.
Police shots fired at the police.
An Oscar-nominated documentary revisits the scene of a deadly police shooting.
Other countries have women on their currency. The U.S. is in the minority for not doing that.
And civil rights icon Ida B. Wells is honored on the U.S. quarter. First off tonight, Governor J.B. Pritzker's proposed state budget holds the line on taxes, but it also largely holds the line on additional spending as Illinois faces more modest revenue projections and the expectation that the state will see cuts in federal funding under President Donald Trump. Our Amanda Vinicky joins us now from Springfield with more. Amanda.
Yes, Brandis, this was a budget address and will doubled as the State of the State address, and Governor J.B. Pritzker used it to issue a warning about what he worries is happening to the country under President Donald Trump. He says, as a Jewish man who knows Holocaust survivors, he after all helped to build the Holocaust Museum in Skokie, he is watching what's happening to the country with foreboding dread.
It took the Nazis 1 month, 3 weeks, 2 days, 8 hours and 40 minutes to dismantle a constitutional republic. And all I'm saying is that when the 5-alarm fire starts to burn, every good person better be ready to man a post with a bucket of water if you want to stop it from raging out of control.
What the future holds for Governor Pritzker is an open question. It could be a run for a third term as governor, but Republicans say that he's openly campaigning for president, and they say this was an offensive way to do it.
I'm personally offended that I had to sit here and repeatedly hear the governor of this state accuse members of my party as being Nazis in a lazy trope to launch a national campaign. I think the Republican caucus of both the House and the Senate deserve an apology from the governor.
Asked about it just a bit ago, Pritzker stood by his remarks. He said that he was warning of tyranny and that what happened last century in Germany and in Europe, he says, could happen anywhere.
So, Amanda, then there's the budget, of course. That could be impacted by federal cuts under Trump.
Yeah, it certainly could, although the governor said just how is difficult to contemplate. He did warn residents that if federal cuts, as the president has been talking about, do hit, that it would hurt many Illinois families, be it in reducing their options or their health care or even the impact of tariffs. Otherwise, though, he said depending on what Trump really carries out, it could cause a whole lot of chaos and confusion in Illinois, but also, he says, in red states as well. He says that it is difficult, however, given that degree of uncertainty, to build into a budget at this point in time.
So, Amanda, what does this budget do then, and how does it handle this deficit that we've been hearing about for some time?
Yeah, that deficit was supposed to be over $3 billion, and we're still really looking at the numbers. Republicans skeptical about these rosier projections that instead say that Illinois is going to have more revenue coming in, albeit that will be modest. So the governor had an easier time than he would have if it had been that $3 billion deficit. So getting to a balanced spending plan did not require system-wide cuts, nor did it require a wholesale tax increase like a raise in the income tax rate.
Let's be clear, I will only sign a balanced budget. If you come to the table looking to spend more, I'm going to ask you where you want to cut. I have made difficult decisions, including to programs that I have championed, which is hard for me, just as I know some of the difficult decisions you will have to make will be hard for you.
Already, Latino lawmakers are pushing back hard against the governor's proposed elimination of a program that provides health care to non-citizen immigrants, roughly between the ages of 40 and 60 years old. Look for that to be a big
All of us
budget
have been
fight.
hearing that it was going to be a tough budget year. I think that we expected there to be some things in the budget that we weren't going to be happy with. But I think completely removing a program is not anything that we were expecting. We're absolutely committed to continuing to fight and hold a line for the program. We believe that healthcare is a human right, and we believe that taking people off of healthcare is not the right answer.
Now, when it comes to spending increases, more money will be going toward pensions. Also, there is a proposed increase to spending on education. However, it is nowhere near the amount that Chicago Public Schools and the Teachers Union have long been clamoring for. Altogether, Republicans say that this is a proposed spending plan that is nowhere near modest nor austere.
Under his leadership, the budget has increased almost 37%. Now, for hardworking families out there, has your salary increased 30% over the last 7 years, or have your bills decreased 37% over the last 7 years? But yet, we have a governor who thinks taxpayers are the golden goose.
Now, this is a $1 billion state budget, so of course there is a whole lot more in it. And then there is also this, the governor's office pointedly trying to, it says, help families by programs that don't cost the state money, and to that end they are proposing changes like allowing community colleges to offer 4-year degrees in select areas, like where there are high needs for careers, for example nursing, and then also restricting or helping to hone in healthcare costs, that is, by restricting what pharmacy benefit managers can do. This is operators that Pritzker says are really partially responsible for increases in prescription drug prices. All of this, at this point, is just a proposal. Illinois lawmakers have the next 3 months to hash it all out. Back to you.
All right, Amanda, thank you. I know you'll keep an eye on it for us. And you can read Amanda's full story on Governor Pritzker's $55 billion budget proposal and reaction to it on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news. And now to some other top stories. School districts across the state would be required to come up with a plan banning cell phones from public school classrooms under another proposal by the governor today. Pritzker's office says legislation already introduced in Springfield would ban personal wireless devices during instructional time, except in cases of an emergency or necessary. The goal is to increase student engagement and reduce social media exposure, which research shows leads to anxiety, depression, and body dissatisfaction. The governor's office says 10 school districts in the state already have such policies, as well as 8 other states in the country. Another group of workers today are rallying against proposed federal funding cuts. This time, researchers at the University of Illinois Chicago say they feel research will.
These grants have made our institution a regional and national leader in public health research and practice. These activities include stopping the development and spread of disease, protecting people from environmental and occupational hazards, and effectively responding to public health emergencies.
Members of a coalition called Labor for Higher Education protested proposed cuts to the National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Last fiscal year, the NIH awarded more than $1.2 billion in funding to Illinois, mostly to universities. The group says UIC alone relies on $500 million in federal research funding, some of which studies AI in healthcare or how to train the next generation of occupational health and safety workers. And this might be bad news for Bears fans. The team is raising its season ticket prices by an average of 10%. Team president Kevin Warren announced the increase in an email to season ticket holders today, citing market dynamics, industry trends, and a strong home schedule. The move comes after the team recently hired Ben Johnson as coach. He was widely considered the top coaching candidate on the market. Up next, City Council decides on whether to decrease Chicago's speed limit. Right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. is made possible in part by the support of these donors.
Chicago City Council members today rejected a push to lower the speed limit on most city streets. While supporters say dropping the speed limit by 5 miles an hour would save lives, opponents warn of unintended consequences. Here's a bit of the debate.
All of this matters because even that 5 mile per hour difference cuts in half the likelihood that your vehicle kills the person that it crashes into. Why are we doing this right now? Despite the fact that I would say notably we have never in the past decade had fewer than 100 traffic fatalities in any given year, this is an essential tool.
Imposing a citywide lowering of the speed limit will have unintended consequences that may not have been looked at today.
Our Heather Sharon joins us from City Hall with more on this move. Heather, remind us what this proposal would have done.
Well, the speed limit right now on most Chicago streets is 30 miles an hour. This measure would have dropped that to 25 miles an hour in an effort to encourage people to slow down, to stop the trend of deadly crashes that have caused serious injuries and death since the pandemic changed how we all drive. Now, opponents said that this was rushed, that they need more time to study such a big change, which they said could increase gridlock and cause, as we heard Alderman Irvin say, a host of unintended consequences.
Heather, the council voted 28-22 against this ordinance. Why did it fail?
Well, it failed because essentially the Black Caucus voted en masse against it. And many of its members said that they were concerned that this would lead to increased enforcement by Chicago police officers on the city streets that could lead to negative interactions between residents and police officers and could lead their residents with tough fees to pay that they can't afford as they struggle to afford the basic necessities of life. There was also a sense that this proposal was designed more with the north side in mind than the south and the west side, and that is always a recipe for disaster on the city council's floor.
And to clarify, Heather, I misspoke. That vote was 28-21, not 22. In another action today, City Council agreed to pay $27 million to the family of a woman who was killed by a driver fleeing Chicago police. You took a look at the cost of these pursuits. What did you find?
Well, since 2019, which was the year that Chicago entered into that federal court order requiring reforms, the city taxpayers have spent nearly $102 million to resolve more than 24 lawsuits stemming from police pursuits. Today's was just the latest. It will go to the family of Angela Parks and her 5 children. She was killed by a driver fleeing police as part of an unauthorized chase. She was left quadriplegic and died 18 months after the crash in what I think was a truly it really displayed the toll that these crashes have taken on Chicago streets.
A heartbreaking case, it sounds like. Heather Sharon at City Hall for us, thank you. And you can read Heather's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news. A film covering a deadly Chicago police shooting is up for an Oscar. It's about Harith Augustus, a 37-year-old barber who was shot and killed by police in South Shore in July 2018. The shooting sparked immediate public outcry and legal fights for full access to police body cam video. That released footage is now a documentary called Incident, which retells Augustus's death and explores how cameras affect police behavior. Joining us now with more are the film's director, Bill Morrison, and Jamie Calvin, co-producer of the film and executive director of the Invisible Institute, a journalism nonprofit. Welcome back to you both.
Thank you.
So this film, as we mentioned, uses a variety of body cam, dash cam, and security footage to sort of piece together what happened to Harith Augustus. Bill, starting with you first, how do all of these pieces sort of fit together to tell the narrative?
Well, we started with what's called a POD, the police observation device, that gets sort of the wide shot, and you see the event take place, a police stop, and then this man falling onto the ground. It's at that point that the audio kicks in, which is from one of the body-worn cameras, and what we hear is police shots fired at the police, and then the officer corrects himself, stammers, and tells his commander that he shot this man and that he had pointed a gun at him. From there, we take a variety of different sources to piece together what actually happened, which was that Harith Augustus was armed, but his gun remained in its holster the whole time. That's clearly seen, and we see this narrative that's adopted by the police that he had taken a gun out and pointed it at the officers in broad daylight. It's just not true.
He was armed, and you also show in the film that he had the right to be armed. He was a FOID firearm identification or owner identification card holder. Jamie, how was getting access to the video this time different from Laquan McDonald several years before?
Yeah, so the Laquan McDonald case, after the video was released and the sort of political earthquake, the city adopted one of the first major reforms was a policy that in incidents of this nature, video and other related evidence would be released within 60 days of the incident. And COPA complied with that requirement in this case.
The Civilian Office of Police Accountability.
Civilian Office of Police Oversight. But the one thing that was really striking by contrast to Laquan McDonald, remember it was 13 months from the incident to the release of the video with a building public campaign, legal challenges, we all reported on it. In this case, in less than 24 hours, the superintendent of police released a snippet of edited video for the purpose of showing that Mr. Augustus had a gun. There had been, demonstrations and turbulence in the South Shore neighborhood where it occurred. And so there was this act of a kind of false transparency.
Like an attempt to shape the narrative on the
shape
behalf
the
of the police
narrative.
department.
So it was such a striking contrast with the Laquan McDonald incident. Litigation was initiated, Freedom of Information Act requests for all of the video. And over time, bit by bit, it came out. So ultimately, we got all of the video of all of the officers present in the incident and the aftermath unedited, which was really the basis for the film. So nobody has ever seen in such a complete, global, immersive way one of these incidents.
From so many perspectives. So in the documentary, police they're very aware that they are being recorded, and that becomes clear. Here's a little bit of that.
They gotta tell us when to stop recording. Yes.
And you let every officer on the scene know to cut off their body camera.
Stop here. You said cut them off. You said cut them off?
Yeah, and there's a couple of other moments in the film as well where you hear officers talking to each other and saying, don't say anything while this camera is on still before those cameras get cut. Jamie, how does the use of body cameras impact police behavior in this film?
Yeah, so it's always fascinated me that there's a sense in which now police kind of perform for the camera. They're aware of the cameras, they alert each other to the fact that they're on camera, but then they actually keep talking. So, I think body cameras to some degree act as a deterrent, not on the initial crime necessarily, but what the film shows in great granular detail is how the official narrative forms almost the moment the body hits the ground. So, right away, the principal officers involved are in a kind of call and response saying, he had a gun, I had to shoot, he was pointing at us, you saved us, back and forth. So, and it kind of traumatized, I think, all but hysterical way. In less than a minute, that sort of dithering exchange turns into the official narrative when a sergeant shows up on the scene. What happened? He pulled a gun on us. I had to shoot him. And there are civilian witnesses who are never interviewed, who had direct, unimpeded view of what happened. They're told, get out of here, get behind the caution
Red
tape.
tape. Yes.
And, so the film just sort of shows this granular process of the narrative forming.
And Bill, how does this film, to that point, how does this give us a sense of how CPD and those officers were functioning in that aftermath?
Well, it seems pretty chaotic, right? There was a telling exchange between the two officers where Officer Halley asked his partner, Officer Fleming, was there a gun? And she says yes. And
Officer Halley being the officer who fired, Officer Fleming being his partner.
His partner. Was there a gun? And she responds yes. And Halley says, did we get the gun? And she says yes. And then he makes the enormous leap. Why did he have to point a gun straight at us? Which, it shows that this narrative was being sort of made up wholesale on the spot, and then it sort of spreads throughout without anybody doing any investigation. As Jamie said, nobody does police work. There are eyewitnesses. None of them are interviewed. It seems to be the entire protocol was just to cordon off the area and remove the corpse as soon as possible.
And of course, we know that there's a lot of work, of course, around the police department and the consent decree only being 9% compliant to address training and discipline in these instances. And sadly, we don't have time to get into all of that. But I do want to ask you, because you've been showing this film quite a bit since you've been working on it, and you've heard from Harith Augustus' family about it. Bill, what have they said? Yeah, we've had 2 screenings here in Chicago, one as part of the Chicago Humanities Festival in November of 2023. And after the screening, Harith's mother stood up and said, now the world can see what happened to my son. And we feel strongly that this film gives her and the family narrative justice in place of any justice provided through the legal system. Jamie, 10 seconds. What do you want people to take away from this? What would you want it to add to the conversation?
I think this is a film that stands in for all sorts of other incidents where the police conduct has produced the moment when officers choose to use deadly force. This was not an incident where Mr. Augustus provoked the violence.
Okay. I watched the film. I've seen it. It's definitely something to watch. Best of luck to the two of you at the Oscars. Thank you for joining us, Bill Morrison and Jamie Calvin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Incident is nominated for an Academy Award in the documentary short film category. The Oscars are on Sunday, March 2nd. For information on where to watch it, please check out our website. And we're back with more right after this. Women's suffragist, journalist, and civil rights icon Ida B. Wells is being immortalized as part of the U.S. Mint's American Women Quarters program. The Chicago icon is in good company. The 2025 coin circulation includes Girl Scouts founder Juliette Gordon-Low, astronomer Vera Rubin, disability justice advocate Stacey Park Milburn, and tennis star Althea Gibson. She's one of 20 sheroes honored in this collection. We caught up with her great-grandson for his thoughts on the recognition.
Part of it is elated that it's happening. Part of it is, hey, it's about time. And as far as currency, other countries have women on their currency. The U.S. is in the minority for not doing that. So we appreciate that that's catching up. But again, when you talk about, I think part of the difficulty in honoring Ida and talking about Ida and how great she was and courageous she was, you've got to talk about what the country was going through at the time, which is not pleasant, right? And so to be able to recognize her and open up dialogue about who she is, what she did. She, not on her own, but she met with President William McKinley in 1898 to try and get lynching to be a federal crime. Women in general, Black women in particular, have been undervalued or erased from history. There's still so many African American people who are the first, right? So she was kind of America's first investigative journalist, just happened to be an African American woman. But to allow her story to be told and for her to inspire other, especially African American young women, to be courageous and speak your mind and fight for what's right is important.
And the Ida B. Wells Quarter is in circulation now. And that's our show for this Wednesday night. You can stream Chicago Tonight on WTTW's YouTube channel every evening, and you can catch up on any programs you may have missed. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to be a multilingual law firm that provides translators for a variety of languages.